If we're getting a dog, we have to name him Oreo.
But you said we can name him Pluto.
Yeah, but look at him, he's black and white. Oreo just makes more sense.
But we agreed on Pluto.
But we have to name him Oreo.
Why do you care about the name so much anyway?
Because names need to match the thing they're named after. It's like naming compounds. That's why today we're looking into naming compounds. This is a hard lesson for some because you essentially have to memorize a list of rules for many different types of compounds. There's ionic compounds, molecular compounds, acids and bases, and hydrates. Since there's so many compounds to cover, I'm going to turn this into a several-part video. Today's video is on ionic compounds.
Cool. Can we name the dog Pluto?
Ugh, fine. First, let's do a little background. The naming of compounds is called chemical nomenclature. However, I often just call it the compound name, so don't be confused if I switch between the two. There's organic and inorganic compounds. Organic compounds contain carbon, the stuff of life, and are usually combined with hydrogen, oxygen, sulfur, or nitrogen. Everything else is classified as an inorganic compound. The four categories mentioned previously, ionic compounds, molecular compounds, acids and bases, and hydrates, are all inorganic compounds. Ionic compounds, as I've covered in previous videos, are made up of cations and anions. Cations are the positively charged metals, and anions are the negatively charged nonmetals. When naming them, the metal cation will always come first, and the nonmetal anion will follow. The cation will keep the same name as the element, and the anion will add an IDE to the end of it. For example, let's look at KBr. K is potassium, and Br is bromine. So, the compound name would be potassium bromide. Notice how I changed the ending from INE to IDE. Now you try, with an example I've used many times in past videos. What is the chemical nomenclature for NaCl? I'll give you a moment to think. Okay, let's see if you're right. Sodium is the element name for Na, and chlorine is the chemical name for Cl. So the compound would be sodium chloride. Pretty simple, right? The examples we went over only have two elements, but ionic compounds can include three if they include cation and anion groups. An example of a cation group is NH4, 1+, which is called ammonium. An example of an anion group is CO3, 2-, which is called carbonate. These compounds with three elements are called ternary compounds. The final thing I'm going to cover today are the names of certain cations. The examples we used only included cations that were 1+ and anions that were 1-. Sometimes, however, elements can form more than one type of cation. These elements are usually the transition metals, which are seen in this portion of the periodic table. Iron is the best element to explain the naming for multiple cations. Iron can form Fe2+ or Fe3+. Fe2+ adds an OUS to the end of the element, so it's referred to as ferrous ion. So, FeCl2, which uses the ferrous ion, is called ferrous chloride. Fe3+ adds an IC to the end, so it's referred to as ferric ion. So, FeCl3, which uses the ferric ion, is called ferric chloride. It should be noted that these suffixes don't actually tell the charge of the cations. This means that OUS doesn't mean the charge is 2+, and IC doesn't mean the charge is 3+. For copper, the two cations are Cu+ and Cu2+. So Cu+ gets the OUS ending, and Cu2+ gets the IC ending. One problem with these suffixes is that certain elements have many more different cations, so it's hard to remember all the suffixes that differentiate them. That's where the stock system comes into place. All you have to do is indicate the number of positive charges in a cation using Roman numerals. Looking back at FeCl2, which is called ferrous chloride, we can simply write that as iron, II, or 2, chloride. FeCl3 would be iron, III, or 3, chloride. A lot easier to remember, isn't it?
Let's review. There's organic compounds and inorganic compounds. Organic compounds include carbon, and inorganic compounds are anything that isn't an organic compound. Ionic compounds are inorganic compounds that are made up of positively charged metals called cations and negatively charged nonmetals called anions. When naming these compounds, you simply put the name of the cation and then the name of the anion with the ending changed to "ide." Ionic compounds are usually made up of 2 elements, but sometimes they can be made up of 3 if they include a cation or anion group. Some elements have many different cations. You can use suffixes to differentiate between them, or you can use the stock system, which basically uses Roman numerals to indicate the charges of the cation.
Question of the day. What are compounds with 3 elements called? Put your answers in the comments below.
Please like, share, comment, and subscribe for more videos every week.